keenly contested race in the history of Africa's most populous nation, Nigeria. Nigeria cannot afford to get it wrong this time around. With over 130 million of its over 200 million people said to be multidimensionally poor, and unemployment and inflation figures now in double digits, we as a people live in very interesting times where the world is experiencing a turmoil, economically and otherwise. So it demands that whoever will lead this country must understand its challenges and how effectively it can be fixed. So it is not up to the people who want to lead to determine how the race is run or how the conversation is fashioned, but it's up to you, those of you who have registered, over 90 million of you who are on the register of INEC, to say how you want it, the kind of conversations that you want. And so we must engage those who are vying for the highest offices in the land on the crucial issues. It is no longer an option because our nation, we need to come together as a people to determine how we need to push this nation forward. So tonight, Channel Television, your most decorated broadcast organization on the African continent, in partnership with members of the Nigerian Civil Society Situation Group, with the support from our foreign partners, are putting up this town hall series. And tonight, it is the turn of the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party and his running mate. Let me remind you, everyone, that it is 75 days, 12 hours to the opening of the 2023 presidential election. Look, some stats are very important for you to take note of. Young people will determine how significant this election will turn. Because in this cycle of registration, 71% of the 12 million new voters are young people and who have now registered. They will be determining how the election will pan out between the ages of 18 and 35. And more than ever, the conversation is rife across social media platforms. And there is no better time to keep the tempo up in the engagement than now. So be part of the conversation, everyone, using the hashtag People's Town Hall. You can send in your comments or questions. So let's get straight to business, everyone. Before we get started, I'd like to first and foremost bring on stage, to warm up the stage and give us an insight on how important this conversation is. We're the head of the electoral process as far as the civil society organization are concerned. The leader and the convener of the Civil Society Nigerian Situation Room, Ms. NLB. I'd like to invite you to come on stage to give a welcome address to everyone as we anticipate the conversation to get started. Ms. NLB. All right. Hopefully she's somewhere, I guess. All right. Let's get started, everyone, and perhaps in a fashion that everyone has been expecting. Let's bring on stage, first and foremost, the vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, a former federal lawmaker, and the vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party in the 2023 presidential election. Welcome with me, Senator Ifeanyi Okowa. All right. I guess we have to wait for a minute because I guess we're trying to fix a few things. Let's go on break, everyone. And when we come back, we'll get started, everyone.
Channels 24 app means you'll always be in touch with the news. Get the latest local and international stories on the go. And there's our social media platforms for news from around the world. Watch the news live and play videos that matter to you. You can also check the eyewitness section to report events around you. Just click on the eyewitness icon and follow the instructions to upload your content. Channels 24 app, the news at your fingertips.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much indeed. We are back here, and we're getting started right now. Apologies for the initial glitch, but let's get straight to it, everyone, because we do not have time. A lot need to be said tonight, and these two men are already waiting to get started. Let me bring on stage, first and foremost, a former federal lawmaker, the incumbent governor of Delta State, and the vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome with me, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa. Thank you so much.
Your protocol is too much.
And now, a former vice president who has been on the political scene for over 3 decades, perhaps one of Nigeria's most influential politicians. He was a candidate of the PDP in 2019, and now is carrying the mantle this time around for the People's Democratic Party. And the post is on the ballot, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much, and welcome, everyone. Nigerian people, this is about you, and you have the floor, because the hashtag is there for you to contribute wherever you may be watching. We begin first and foremost by hearing from the candidates their opening statement, and each of them will have 2 minutes to tell Nigerians why they're deserving of your vote at the February poll. I will begin with the vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Senator Ifeanyi Okowa. Your Excellencies, you have the option of either sitting or standing, whichever suits you. Thank you so much for coming. I'll allow you, Senator Okowa, for your opening statement. 2 minutes.
First, I want to thank Nigerians who are watching. We are in a critical situation in our nation.
and we do know that the challenges are enormous. I'm very much convinced within myself that for us to be able to move forward, we need a team with experience, relevant experience. I'm very proud to be the vice presidential candidate to Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, because I know that in the Nigerian situation that we have found ourselves at the moment is the best position to be able to take us out of where we are. I said this severally, I mean it, because I do know that his experience as the vice president between 1999 and 2007 is something that is going to be very relevant in Nigerian situation that we find ourselves. He is a man with lots of experience and with the humility, and somebody who is decentralized and is actually ready to communicate with Nigerians and to take every Nigerian along in an inclusive governance and government in which, together as a people, we can truly take Nigeria out of where we are into the Nigeria of our dream. Yes, I have my own experiences, I've been a local government chairman, I've been commissioner, I've been secretary to the state government, I've been a senator and now governor. That would be an added-on experience to what he has. But as to who is able to manage Nigeria in today's Nigeria, to take us out of where we are into the Nigeria of our dream, there is only one man out there, and that is Atiku Abubakar.
Thank you so much indeed. You are almost just about at the tick of time, as though you are timing yourself. Thank you so much. Let's listen to the presidential candidate of the PDP, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, for your opening statement. 2 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Sheon, and thank you, channels, for making this opportunity possible. Nigeria, just as my running mate said, is facing very, very serious challenges at this point in time. I don't think I have seen Nigeria go through such challenges since after the Civil War. Today we have a disunited country. Today we have the gravest economic challenge, as well as also security challenges. And our poverty rate is the worst. We are the headquarters of poverty in the world. And our unemployment is also the worst. Our educational system is in serious jeopardy. So these are by no means very, mean challenges. They are very serious. And we need people who have the experience, who have the competence, and people who have the records. That, I believe, makes me unique among other contestants, not only of my experiences in governance, but in my experience in struggle for return of democracy in this country. Very many of us among the generation that fought the military, some lost their lives. People like me went on exile and came back and still continue with the struggles. We also participated in framing the current constitution, despite its shortcomings, but at least it was a step towards our democratic experience today. So having participated in all these struggles, from military struggles to democratic struggles, and then eventually having had the opportunity to serve as vice president, and we came across very, very similar challenges we are facing today, but maybe not as grave as we are having today, I think provides me with a unique opportunity to offer my services to Nigerians and also, to our own country. So I welcome this opportunity to exchange with Nigerians and also to listen to them. Not that we have not been listening to them, we have been listening to them quite all right, but I think perhaps this is an opportunity, to exchange ideas and views. We may not have the complete and comprehensive solutions. But by listening to Nigerians, we can, of course, add value to what we have already proposed that we are going to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed. Let me tell you that the reasons why we have provided this platform, and we're not doing it in the usual manner, is because we want an all-inclusive conversation. So you will see Nigerians from all sectors, from the economy to the security to the health, education, civil society, and in fact, you see children asking you questions today to tell you how inclusive these conversations are. And so it's up to Nigerians now. And ladies and gentlemen, what better way to start if you look at it? Security is a major issue in our country today. And of course, anyone who wants to lead this country needs to tell Nigerians how you need to fix the security problem. The first person that will be asking the question of security is a well-known security consultant and expert. He's a former director with the DSS, Mr. Mike Ejiofor. Good to see you, Mr. Mike. Your questions. And let me tell Nigerians the reason why you see those who are asking questions reading from the script is because we want precision. We want people to be able to ask direct questions. Mr. Ejiofor, go ahead, please.
Yeah, good evening, Your Excellencies. Well, security is the bedrock for any meaningful development. And I know you have a lot of programs. Unfortunately, there are a series of security challenges in the country, especially separatist agitations in almost all the parts of the country. Now, I take Southeast geopolitical zone, for instance. Can you tell Nigerians what you intend to do differently, which possibly is not being done now to stem the tide? Specifically, do you intend to use political solutions to resolve IPOB agitations as against current government position? Related to these activities are the activities of unknown gunmen who have been wreaking havoc in the zone. If you intend to use political solutions of IPOB, how do you sieve the wheat from the chaff? That is addressing the political solutions of IPOB and at the same time isolating and identifying the unknown gunmen for appropriate action to stabilize the region. Then question 2 is that...
I think just pause on that.
Okay.
I like, so that we don't muddle up it's a very critical question, which I like. And a lot of Nigerians who want to know what solutions you have towards that.
Like he said, every geopolitical zone has its own peculiar security challenge. He brought out the iPod issue in the Southeast. The iPod issue in the Southeast is basically, as far as my understanding is concerned, is about the realization of Biafra. Is it possible for Biafra to be realized today? How? By negotiations or by going through another civil war, which we can't afford to? So I believe we should be able to negotiate with the agitators from the Southeast as far as the issue of Biafra is concerned. We believe what they need is more autonomy as far as their sub-region is concerned. That is why we propose restructuring of the country, by which we mean devolution of more powers and resources. After all, there was Eastern Nigeria in the First Republic, and they developed at their own pace and with their own resources. So I see no reason why a middle-of-the-road solution, in other words, restructuring, devolution of more powers and resources, should not be a solution to their various agitations. The agitations are in different perspectives, to my understanding. One of it is political. And political has the sense of how does the Southeast, participate in power sharing in the country. And we are in a democratic society. There is no one single geopolitical, zone in this country that on its own can achieve political power without crossing the Niger or being in alliance with other geopolitical zones. I think this is what they should begin to think. Okay, how do they partner with other parts of the country to secure political power, for their own interests or to protect their own interests? I think these are the way to go as far as the agitations for IPOD is concerned. I don't know whether my running mate has something to add, being also from almost about our neighbors, to the southeast.
Essentially, our presidential candidate has laid the ground. He's told Nigerians what he intends to do. Strategic engagement is very important, but the principle also of being inclusive in governance is very important. Because I know that the Southeast have continued to also agitate as a result of the fact that they don't feel included. If you watch the security architecture of the current government, they don't appear to play any major roles. So they see themselves as excluded, in quotes, as if they are not part of this nation. That is not the type of government that Atiku Abubakar wants to run. He's going to run an all-inclusive government in which every segment of this country will have a feeling of being part of the and part of the nation. That obviously, to a very large extent, will add on to the other steps that our presidential candidate will take by the time he assumes office on May 29, 2023.
Thank you so much. I would have said because of time, but quickly, Mr. Ejiofor, I will permit one more question from you.
Okay. My final question then is, there is general perception that provision of security funds at all levels of government are conduit pipes with which chief executives siphon government funds, and they are generally believed, rightly or wrongly, that they are never accounted for. What's your take on this? Do you intend to retain it or scrap it?
That means security votes.
Security votes, yes.
All right.
Security votes have been part of our governance since independence, and perhaps before independence. I think what is required is accountability of security votes where they are budgeted for. I think that is what is, absent in our current dispensation. So I will advocate for accountability of security votes rather than allowing chief executives, whether at local government level or state or at the federal level, to expend security votes as they like.
So has it been judiciously accounted for? Has it been used properly? I think that's the right word.
Of course, there have been abuses. There is no doubt about that. We cannot close our eyes to say that there have not been abuses of the utilization of security votes at the various levels of governance. And that's why I am advocating for an accountability institution as far as security votes are concerned. Just as you are called to account for budget provisions, you should be called to account also your security votes.
So you won't be calling for the scrapping?
No.
Okay. All right, let me allow yet another person. Mr. Kabiru Adamu is also a security consultant and the CEO of Beacon Consulting. Thank you so much, Mr. Adamu. It's good to see you again. Do you want to shoot your best question tonight?
I'll try. Your Excellencies, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for the well thought out covenant with Nigerians. I went through it, and I must say it's very impressive. I particularly narrowed down on my field, which is security. You divided it into 3 parts, and the part that excites me is what you intend to do. You listed a couple of things, and time would not allow me to read them all out, but I went through them, one after the other. The challenge is the methodology. We can relate with what you indicated you are going to do, but we couldn't find the methodology. So I have 3 questions. I don't know if I have time to ask them all, but I'll ask probably 2. One is security sector governance. I think it's very important. It's been discussed over security sector governance. There are three players in this space: the politicians, technocrats, and then civil servants. What do you have any plans to develop the capacity of these three players so that we have a security sector that is relevant for 2023 when post the election? So that is one. And then two is your understanding of security, Your Excellency. Modern day security is about human security. I know within the covenant you talked about it, but I would love to hear from you. What do you have in terms of addressing human security? Thank you.
You know, I have been to several parts of the world. One of the security architecture I admire is the UAE security architecture. And it is primarily based on monitoring. You don't see policemen in uniform in UAE. You don't see soldiers. But virtually everybody is being monitored on a daily basis. And particularly if you are a visitor. From the moment you step into the country till you go out, anywhere you are going, you are being watched. And that is the deployment of technology as far as security is concerned. But that is to say, we are aiming at the ultimate. But we have to deal with our current security structure. How do we reform it to ensure that we give our people the most secure environment to undertake their own legitimate businesses wherever they may be, whether in the rural areas, semi-urban and urban, and so on and so forth. I think this is the most immediate requirement that any government should be doing now, because like the first questionnaire said, there is a security challenge in every geopolitical zone. And each geopolitical zone is peculiar. They may not necessarily be the same, but the security challenges remain there. So I think we have a two-pronged approach I will rather adopt. One, how do we reform the current security structure to make sure we deliver security to everybody? And then secondly, in the medium to long term, then think of, the ideal security. When it comes to, in terms of education, you will also find that we are more educated than UAE. So it is not only the issue of education. I think it's the issue of governance. So this is my initial response to your questions. I don't know, my running mate may have additional, to what I have said.
Yeah, in the covenant with Nigerians, as proposed by the presidential candidates, spoke about a whole lot of things. We do realize that you have the political class, the technocrats and the civil servants. We must get everybody to work together and have the same thought process so that we're on the same pathway. There's no doubt as to that. Then we must recognize that as we begin to look into all the issues, we must be able to sit down and ensure that the technocrats within the various agencies that they interrelate with each other, we're able to continue to improve on the trainings, improve on the welfare to ensure a total buy-in into the programs that have been laid forth. And I know that my presidential candidate who will be president May 29, 2023, that definitely he's going to provide that critical leadership that will get everybody on board. We don't want a situation where people are working separately as if it's not one government. Whether you're a technocrat, you're in the civil service, or you're in the political class, the ball actually ends on his table. He provides that leadership that everybody has to follow. And I know that he's ready to provide that critical leadership, which is very, very important, definitely very important for us. And looking into various ways of interrelating beyond issues as to the kinetic approach, intelligence gathering. We must look futuristically at how to reduce the level of people who can be available for crime. And the way to do that is to ensure that we begin to create processes how Nigerians can be very gainfully employed. That is very important. It's in part of this process. It's very clearly stated in the covenant with Nigerians. And in that process, we do realize that the more we get our youth more gainfully employed, the more we get them to believe more in the Nigeria. And they can only believe more in Nigeria when you're providing that critical leadership that makes everything work, including the economy of the people, including generating employment. Then you have to seek out to want to commit crimes. So I'm going to seek out to want to commit crimes. I think there's a lot of process. Thank you for going through that covenant with Nigerians, and I think that document is to call on all Nigerians to truly read through. When they read through it, they will understand that we are best prepared for the job ahead.
Thank you, Excellency. Nigerians are really interested in this conversation of security, and some of them are already talking on social media. Let me show you some of their comments, which when I read, I know someone else is standing by on a security question. But take a look at what Della Wise on Twitter said, and this is his question. He says, what is Atiku position about Boko Haram and Okowa position about militancy should in case they rise up again? That's one. And there is Chidex on Facebook, and he's saying, what scientific method will you adopt to solve insecurity in Nigeria, because the analog method has failed us? Your Excellencies, I'll allow you to respond to those questions, but let's run for a break now. And when we return, these are genuine questions on your mind. I'll create a few more minutes for security before we go into the economy. But we'll take a breather. And when we come back, the People's Town Hall, your town hall, continues with the presidential candidates of the PDP and his running mate, Senator Ifeanyi Okowa. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back.
Now that you have registered to vote in 2023 general elections, to ensure your voice is heard through your vote, there are a few more things you need to do. 1. Listen for INEC's announcement on when distribution of PVCs begin for those who registered this year. 2. Go and collect your permanent voters card, PVC. 3. Check your polling unit at www.inecnigeria.org/elections/polling-unit/ for the exact location. 4. Come out on election day to vote and protect your vote. 5. Remember number 1 to 4. We can only protect our democracy when we all vote. This message is from the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room with support from UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO.
Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. Channels Television, ubiquitous.
Are you registered to vote in the 2023 general elections? Collection of permanent voters cards, PVCs, begins on Monday, 12th December 2022 to Sunday, 22nd January 2023 at all the 774 local government offices of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily, including Saturdays and Sundays. If you are unable to collect your PVC at the local government office located where you are registered to vote, visit the registration registration area or ward center where you are registered to vote from Friday, 6th January 2023 to Sunday, 15th January 2023. Help desks will also be available to assist registrants with complaints relating to their PVC collection. Ensure you collect your PVC and vote in the 2023 general election because people's votes count. This message is brought to you by the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room.
Thank you so much, everyone, and welcome back. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, is on stage here alongside his running mate. They are running things tonight. As far as the questions on your mind, Senator Ifeanyi Okowa, the vice presidential candidate of the PDP, and they are answering the questions that you need to know ahead of the elections. And so earlier, before we went on break, I'll create just a few minutes more for security questions. There are these specific questions from the social media that I'd like you to deal with. And this is coming from Della Wise. He's on Twitter, and he's asking, first to you, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, he says, what is Atiku's position about Boko Haram? And to Senator Okowa, he said, what is your position about militancy should they arise again? Just about a minute for each of those responses.
I still cannot understand why we should have Boko Haram. You see, I served in Borno State when it was the Northeast. And as a custom officer, I was patrolling the entire Northeast. So I'm very, very conversant with the vegetation and with the border areas. I still cannot find a place in the Borno area where anybody can hide and cannot be seen. I cannot understand, honestly, the Boko Haram phenomenon. Sometimes when returning from Europe, 30 feet above, I could see a man walking in Borno State. So where is the place to hide? To the extent that they said there is a place called Zambisa. I've been there. I didn't see a forest. It's just shrubs here and there. So, and we have deployed the Nigerian military, which used to be the best, one of the best in the world. They have fought, a number of international arena, and they have excelled. And here we are deploying the Nigerian military with its might and everything, and we just couldn't, eliminate Boko Haram. So I am puzzled. So maybe when I get there, I will understand, but honestly, I cannot understand the Boko Haram phenomenon.
Do you think that is politically motivated?
Everything is there. Everything is there. Shown, everything is there. Politics is there. Business is there. Security, everything is there.
Is there a solution to it?
Of course, the solution is leadership, strong leadership, to deal with all these interest groups within the military and outside the military.
Let me allow Senator Okowa on the issue of militancy. That's what Chirex was asking. Is there any answer to the issue of militancy?
First, I believe that once you provide the needed governance, it's unlikely that militancy will return again. You first want to ask yourself, what led to that? People felt ignored. People felt excluded from governance. They were not seeing the infrastructure. Their children didn't find the space to get properly educated, to get access to jobs. These were quite obvious. So in that frustration, you saw a lot of youths take to arms. But when Atiku Abubakar comes back, the leadership is so structured the way it is done that we're going to provide services that will reach out to all. We are going to ensure that people are carried along in the education sector, in the provision of startup jobs, in the provision of entrepreneurial skills, in ensuring that our people actually go to school and then they have the opportunity to be able to educate themselves and get gainfully employed, because we're going to make the economy work all over again. And with all this in place and the implementation, the full implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act, which is very important, where the communities are going to have a feeling of being included in governance, because in that act, it provides for a community fund, that is host community fund. And that is enough to help them to develop themselves, to develop their children, to develop facilities beyond the facilities that government will provide. Beyond that, we're also going to ensure that we have an efficient NDDC that works for the good of the people, carrying the people along, providing infrastructure, providing them with educational facilities and other opportunities. That's not what we have at the moment. So when you get all these things, when you make them functional and the people can see the development, you are not going to see militancy come back again. In Delta State, by the time we came in 2015, it was really very tough for us. But by the time, after 2 years, by the time we had started providing infrastructure in the various communities in the creeks, which they thought that they could never really get, by the time we started making those provisions and we started engaging them, they realized that the best was to embrace government and to work together with government for further development. And we developed a lot of our communities, severally. I don't have to name them, but various communities have been developed. So that when people get to their ancestral homes, they can see the beauty of the place and they have a sense of being part of Nigeria. That is the leadership that Atiku government is going to provide for Nigeria.
All right. Quickly, I just have about 1 minute, 30 seconds on the issue of security. But I know Japhet is going to be the last person who will take on the issue of security. And when he does that, Your Excellencies, don't forget that Chide's question on scientific method that you will employ in fixing security. He said the manual or the analog method has failed us. But let's listen to Japhet. Japhet, your best question, and just in a few seconds. Go ahead.
Your Excellencies, thank you for availing yourselves to be part of this all-important conversation. I'll go straight to the point. The proliferation of light arms and small weapons is to a large extent responsible for the insecurity that is bedeviling our nation as we speak. What practical and viable interventions are you going to undertake in order to disarm and reintegrate these non-state actors who have taken up arms against the state? We have bandits in the northwest, we have insurgents in the northeast, and all of that.
All right.
And it's a serious issue. What practical, viable solutions are you going to undertake so that we mop up these arms, disarm these agitators, and then reintegrate them into the society?
Thank you, Japhet. Yeah. So I'm going to give you an onerous task of answering this question in just about 1.5 minutes, because economy is next and it's also very important.
Again, I want to go back to a few years. In 2007, when I planned to run for president, I set up a special team to help me find solutions to the Niger Delta militancy. And one of their recommendations was, of course, at the end of the day, anyway, when I didn't win and handed over the recommendations to late Umaru Yar'Adua, and that led to the establishment of the policies as far as Niger Delta crisis is concerned, particularly the amnesty. The creation of the Niger Delta Ministry was one of the recommendations I handed over to him. But then what has happened to the Ministry of Niger Delta, with all the money that is being pumped into the ministry today? They couldn't take undertake one project, take the east-west road. They have enough money to do that road. But look at the state of the road today. So I think there will be need for us to re-examine these state, entities we have set up, specialized state entities we have set up to bring about soccer and reduce the tension within the populace to make sure that they deliver on what is actually the intention of government. So I believe this is one way we can get some of these agitations settled. But again, as posited, by Governor Okowa, bringing development, to the doorsteps of these communities in the Niger Delta area is also another way of making sure that, we cool down the restiveness in those communities.
The issue of the method, digital method, other than the analog, which the respondent said it has failed us. Just 20 seconds, if you may respond.
Well, I have already advocated for that because I tried to bring the experience of the UAE as far as, the technical aspect of security is concerned. I mean, today there are more than 10 million people residing in the UAE. And you don't see a policeman in uniform, hardly. But anywhere you go, you are being monitored. And the fact that you are being monitored will, of course, discourage you from committing a crime because you know that if you commit a crime, you will be traced.
That's going to be a lot of resources to be able to procure those kind of gadgets. Where would you get the money from?
Not really. Because one single gadget, can give you an overview of what is happening in this.
What about electricity too? Electricity is...
Of course, we have to provide electricity to power them. Yes, indeed.
Okay, we'll get to that, Your Excellency. Let's move straight to the economy. And the very first person, like I said, we're getting straight to the representative of the people, the National Association of Nigerian Traders. I have Ijoma Anuforo, who is the PRO. Ijoma, hi.
For the first time under the current dispensation, programs like the trader money and the market money were introduced. And though the programs were bedeviled by politicization and bad implementation and other challenges, at least it was a little recognition of the significance of traders to the economy. Come 2023, if elected president, sir, what would you do with these instruments? Or what other plans do you have for traders who prior to this time have been very marginalized, were hardly part of the government's social investment programs or intervention programs, and we are the heartbeat of the Nigerian nation?
All right. Thank you, Ijoma.
I think the defect in the system is not incorporating the system into an institutionalized process. Because what I understood, trader money and market women were either the vice president going around distributing money or the minister of humanitarian affairs going around and distributing money. Why not create institutions that can actually attend to every sector of the economy as far as this market, money market or trader market is concerned? You have, like we said, we are going to vote 10 billion to boost, small and medium enterprises. We have a number of institutions where such funding can be channeled so that it is institutionalized instead of personalizing it and also using it for political, purposes. Because currently market money, trader money has become political tools, to promote political interests of a particular political party.
Would you be scrapping all those?
No. What I'm saying is that they should be incorporated into an institutionalized, institution so that it survives every government that comes in.
So she was talking about the traders not properly integrated into the system. And she said they are the heart of the
because there is no institution. If you have an institution to cater for that, the institution will be able to give everybody guidelines. This is how you assess these funds, and this is how long it is going to take you to repay them, and so on and so forth.
All right. There is the representative of the Nigerian Manufacturers Association, and that association nationwide is going to be represented by the chairman of the Abuja chapter, and Kayode Alonge. Kayode, what is coming from the Nigerian Manufacturers Association? Kayode.
Thank you so much, Your Excellencies. The Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, it's a very strategic, group that helps to, run the economy productively. Over the years, the manufacturing sector has witnessed a lot of challenges, and most importantly, of interest is the challenges of a shortage of FX supply. We have had situations where factories have had to shut down because they are not able to pay, for the purchase of equipment, that are coming from overseas. Some also have the challenges of being able to make payment for some other kind of inputs that are required for their steady operation. Before now,
so can you go straight to the question?
Yeah,
because of time.
Yeah, the question is that as it is today, we have multiple exchange rates being operated. The gap has continued to increase between the CBN rate and the parallel market rate. This is hurting the manufacturing sector. Your Excellency would like to know, in the event that your party is elected, come February 2023, we want to know what you would like to do differently to address the shortage of FS supply and the decline of the value of Naira.
Thank you so much, Kayode. I appreciate it. The Manufacturers Association.
I happen to be a member.
So you know the problems?
Yes, because some of my factories get closed for 2 months or so because we can't get raw materials and so on. First of all, I will direct the central bank to stop multiple exchange rates so that we close the gap we know. And then, of course, secondly, how do we also encourage foreign investors, to bring in forex from abroad? I think is very, very key as far as that challenge is concerned. So basically, if you are able to do that, you will then make available as much foreign exchange as possible. You may not have enough to cover everybody, but at least you will get, most of the industries or factories working. First of all, by making sure that you have only a dual exchange rate, not multiple exchange rate, as we currently have. Because the multiple exchange rate regime is corrupted, because the people who desire the foreign exchange don't get it. So I think this is a very, serious flaw. So this
perhaps as a follow-up, since you're a member of the Manufacturers Association, but I'm perhaps as worried as a lot of Nigerians at the parity of the Nigerian to the dollar, for example. And it's, if I'm not mistaken, over 700 naira to the dollar now.
Unless you abolish, the multiple exchange rate regime, you cannot get, a realistic exchange rate.
How low can you bring it? Should you become president?
It's not a question of how low I can bring it, but it is a mechanism by the central bank. All what I need to do is direct the central bank. Look, I want this forex, this dual exchange rate finish.
Okay. Let me quickly also take a short break, and when we come back, we continue on the issue of the economy. There is a group that is very bothered about the subsidy regime, and we will also hear from a very popular Nigerian comedian about the plans of the PDP and in their manifesto, if they have anything to cater for the entertainment industry. They say that they play a major role in that industry. Ali Baba also will be asking his question as a member of the entertainment industry, and much more on the People's Town Hall. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back.
That you have registered to vote in 2023 general elections, to ensure your voice is heard through your vote, there are a few more things you need to do. 1. Listen for INEC's announcement on when distribution of PVCs begin for those who registered this year. 2. Go and collect your permanent voters card, PVC. 3. Check your polling unit at www.inecnigeria.org/elections/polling-unit/ for the exact location. 4. Come out on election day to vote and protect your vote. 5. Remember number 1 to 4. We can only protect our democracy when we all vote. This message is from the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room with support from UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO.
Stay connected to the world with Channels TV Podcast and get all the trending stories. Simply log on to channelstv.com. Click on podcast, select the program of your choice, and listen. Our podcast is available on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Tap the expertise you trust. Touch the stories that touch you. Anytime, anywhere.
Are you registered to vote in the 2023 general elections? Collection of permanent voters cards, PVCs, begins on Monday, 12th December 2022 to Sunday, 22nd January 2023 at all the 774 local government offices of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily, including Saturdays and Sundays. If you are unable to collect your PVC at the local government office located where you are registered to vote, visit the registration area or ward center where you are registered to vote from Friday, 6th January 2023 to Sunday, 15th January 2023. Help desks will also be available to assist registrants with complaints relating to their PVC collection. Ensure you collect your PVC and vote in the 2023 general election because people's votes count. This message is brought to you by the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room.
Thank you so much indeed, everyone, to the People's Town Hall. Don't forget, you can be part of the conversation the nation is talking about. What interests Nigeria at this moment, very critical moment, and who has the capacity to do it? And that's why we're engaging the candidates and their political parties on their manifesto and agenda. Atiku Abubakar and Senator Okowa has been on the stage for the last hour, and the economy is taking our attention. I'd like to bring in Faith Nwa-Dishi. She is an official of PEL, which is a program of the UK office, and a question is about the issue of subsidy. I know you have a lot of questions on subsidy. Faith, shoot the best one.
Thank you so much, Your Excellencies. Good evening. I work with the Center for Transparency Advocacy and not Pearl. I'm a member of the Coalition for Subsidy Reform. Your Excellencies, we have spent so far over $15 billion in addressing the issue of subsidy, yet we don't have petroleum products in the country. If elected president of the country, what will you do differently to address the issue of subsidy, considering that it is an integral part of the sustenance of our economy? What will you do differently? Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Faith. Subsidy. Anything you plan to do differently?
Yeah, I have already announced that we are going to remove subsidy. And then, of course, negotiate with all stakeholders on how we can, establish palliatives, for removing subsidy. And in fact, whether we decide to remove subsidy or not, based on the Petroleum Industry Act, by June next year, subsidy will have to stop, even by our law, which has been passed by the National Assembly. But as far back as last election season, I announced I was going to remove subsidy. And of course, then negotiate with stakeholders how we would alleviate the sufferings, that will be encountered by the masses who may be affected, particularly the vulnerable. So basically, this is our approach. And that is what we are going to implement.
All right.
You want to add something?
Yeah, I think that my presidential candidate has spoken about that severally. And the very important aspect is that a lot part of our economy is also suffering because of this continuous fuel subsidy, beyond the fact that the administration of the fuel subsidy regime is something that has to be looked into. But the real question is, education is suffering, health services is suffering, and these two areas are very critical to the larger majority of Nigerians who are in the lower poverty rung. And it's important that we actually begin to free funds to address issues of education, to address issues on health, so that we can provide health to a larger majority of our people and provide education for our children, and ensure that we're able to develop every Nigerian to such an extent that they're able to freely compete for themselves and be able to take care of themselves. So subsidy removal is what an Atiku Abubakar government has already proposed, even before this current electionary season. And I believe that it's very important for our nation, because we cannot even afford to continue to provide the subsidy, because we don't even have the fund to provide the subsidy. If you watch the 2023 budget and even the 2022 budget, you realize that something is fundamentally wrong with the budget of this nation. We cannot afford to continue to borrow funds, continue to borrow, and you'll continue to subsidize. So as the subsidy is being removed, every process is also going to be put in place to ensure that we're able to grow the refining capacity of our nation. And that is already fully documented in my covenant with Nigerians.
I also need to remind Nigerians that when we were in office between 1999 and 2007, we had proposed to remove subsidy in 4 stages. As chairman of the Economic Council, I supervised and implemented phase 1, phase 2. By the time we got to phase 3, it was suspended. If we had gone with that program, by the time we left office, there wouldn't have been any more subsidy for any government to inherit. But unfortunately, if you recall, we had a dialogue with the NLC then, headed by Adams, and they gave us all what they needed, public transportation, blah, 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 and we provided all that. And then we started removing the subsidy. I removed phase 1, I removed phase 2, but then we got stuck. And even when subsequent governments came, instead of them to continue with that program, it got hijacked. What they call, what is it? in public service?
Because public service is one area that you perhaps will touch on. But just to let you know that we're monitoring what is happening on social media. Chuku Ebuka M. Anaibo on Facebook. Your question, which we're asking, can the presidential candidate give his take on subsidy and use of multiple foreign exchange pegs in the economy? I guess your question has been answered. Let's listen to yet another economy-related question, this time around about the creative and the entertainment industry. This is one coming from Alibaba, one of Nigeria's leading stand-up comedians. Take a listen to his question.
The second question, sir, Your Excellency, is you know that the creative industry worldwide can provide an add to the GDP. It can help to balance out exchange rates. It can provide employment. It can improve quality of life. It can also make sure that the culture and history of the people preserved and improved upon. What would your administration do that would be different from what all other administrations have done?
In 2019, I was in Lagos and had even a written agreement with the creative industry. Unfortunately, I didn't win that election. This year, a few weeks ago, precisely I think 2 weeks ago, I had a meeting with the creative industry again in Lagos. There is no doubt it is virtually second to agriculture as far as, employment opportunities are concerned. Agriculture has the highest rate of employment opportunities for our people, followed by creative industry. It's a very, very important sector of our economy. And we had a robust engagement in Lagos not quite 2 weeks ago. And again, I committed myself to really supporting the creative industry to make sure that they play even a bigger role than they are playing today. So that is the assurance I can give you. And I think nobody has been quite in the forefront as far as the creative industry is concerned than myself. I don't think any of my contemporaries in this race have engaged the creative industries as much as I have engaged them both in 2019 and also this year. So you can be rest assured that you have a friend in the Aso Rock.
All right. There seems to be a mix-up. There was a question before this one. I think we played the second one before the first. If there is opportunity to play the very first question from Alibaba, can we play it now?
As the presidential candidate of your party and the former vice president, I would like to know, what are the challenges that people are having in the creative sector and the creative industry that is restricting the growth of the sector?
I think support from government and funding. The only administration that has tried to fund the creative industry was the PDP administration of President Jonathan by allocating 100 billion for the creative industry. And that 100 billion was not even assessed by the creative industry. So again, the future of the creative industry is by electing another PDP government. Not only are we going to increase the funding as far as the creative industry is concerned, but that we are going to make sure that it is accessible to every member or organization of the creative industry based on the process and the procedure.
All right. Let's take another economic-related question. Celestine is standing by. Hi, Celestine.
Yeah, good evening. Okay, Your Excellencies, I have a political economic question centered around poverty. As you know, the recent data from NBS is showing more than 133 million Nigerians dwelling in multi-dimensional poverty. It means it goes beyond the liquid cash, but access to water and others. As we assume office in 2023, God willing, Please, can you lay down concrete sectorial approach to this beyond market money and others?
Thank you, Celestin.
Well, Celestin, unfortunately, whichever sector you take requires money. And first and foremost, we have to increase, our funding of education. Education is basic. We have tried to do that when we came into office by establishing Universal Basic Education Authority, by introducing education tax. Nigerians are paying education tax, and we are channeling those money or revenue to states and local governments. And there is also counterpart funding by both, the federal government. In other words, if states, fund more money, or of course they access more money from the federal government and also international donor agencies. So I think basically the buck stops at the states and local governments, whereby we need to make sure that we encourage states and local governments to invest more in education, because it is a concurrent issue, in our constitution. The federal government is at the top, and all what it can do is to make sure that it, creates the environment and it provides the necessary resource support to the lower levels of government, that is the states and the local governments. I think this is where we must pay attention to and make sure that the funding is really invested in education, unlike what is currently now taking place. Some state government cannot even access the counterpart funding because they are not funding as much as required by either legislation or even convention. So that's the only way we can make sure that the educational sector gets a boost.
There are a few questions coming from the social media, and this is Ernest Onuoha at Ernest Onuoha on Twitter, and he's asking, said, to Ruki of Adamawa, according to MBS, there are 130 million multidimensional poor Nigerians today. What policies will you introduce to cut the poverty index by 50% in 4 years? You've answered that. There is another question coming from Facebook, and I understand that there are a lot of questions in this respect also. This is from Jamilu Momodu. He says, why is Atiku fixated on selling national assets that other government built with taxpayers' money? Is he not a builder? So if you can, you've answered the first one, obviously.
Yes, I have answered the fourth. I'm not fixated, but I think that is best for the country. Let's be honest with ourselves. We have 4 refineries. They have ceased functioning, I don't know for how many years today. And every year we budget money for overhauling the refineries, refineries that don't work. Please, let's give it to the private sector. In every great nation in this country, you find that it is the private sector that is the driver of the economy. They provide the jobs, they provide the prosperity, they do everything. Why should we be different? I'm not fixated. If you feel that is the best for you, for God's sake, go and elect somebody who can come and leave them moribund. They are not working, and then you are spending money on them. Tell me how they benefit the community or the society. Today, if I sell those 4 refineries, I will do so much. Somebody was asking me, how am I going?
Fund MSME.
How am I going to fund it? I'm going to get more than 10 billion. And I will fund the SMEs, which will give funding to the young men and women who want to set up their own enterprises and promote employment and promote prosperity in the community and in the country. All
right, let's move quickly to education. And perhaps for 8 to 9 months in this country, there is a group of people within the education sector that were not happy. They are the ASU. We have the immediate past investment secretary of ASU, Mr. Ben Igeoke. He has a question for the flag bearers of the PDP.
Your Excellencies, good evening, and thank you, Okivaloye, for the opportunity. Your Excellency has been talking about increasing funding allocation to education. That's quite heartwarming. Currently, we are operating less than 6% budgetary allocation to education in Nigeria, which is the lowest in Africa. And for a country that wants to develop, because you have said already that education is the bedrock of national development or nation building. Could you just tell Nigerians that you will take it to so-and-so point, considering the UNESCO benchmark that they give from time to time?
All right.
That's question one.
No, you have one. You have one opportunity for one. We have all the sectors. So please, can you go ahead?
Sure. What I said is that I'm going to increase the funding level as against what is currently obtained. No doubt about that, because I am a firm and committed believer in education. And secondly, I have undertaken to say, all right, ASU, we know whatever backlog, we know we are going to clear all the backlogs and make sure that you go back, to classes and students go back to school. But then there are sometimes invisible roadblocks. You see, when the federal government releases money for the universities, it doesn't go straight to the universities. It goes to another federal bureaucracy. And that federal bureaucracy may decide to do whatever they want before they send the money to the individual universities. I think that's a bottleneck. Why not remove the bottleneck? Whatever is due to university A, B, C, D, send it direct. I was giving an example last time when I had to discuss this issue. I said when I was vice president, I visited several embassies. I found all the staff not paid for several months. I even visited Togo, where is the headquarters of Okowa. Every West African country has a building and staff quarters for as poor as they may be. But Nigeria didn't have a founding member of ECOWAS. I came back, I called the Minister of Finance. I said, what's happening? Let's do something different. She said, well, let's ask every embassy to give us their budget. And when they give us their budget, we don't send the money through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We send the money straight to the embassies. And that immediately eliminated the backlog of all the salaries that they were owing to our staff abroad. But then the ministry didn't like it. They kept on fighting. So sometimes you have to really be bold enough to change some of the processes or procedures that are currently obtained, in the public service, to get service delivered to where they should be delivered. I was told of a story where, of course, some funding for universities were stalled at NUC. NUC, what do you want to operate so much? Okay, universities, what do you want to operate so much? You give them direct. Why do you have to go through NUC? Of course, as I said, I pledge to increase, the funding of education as far as our budgetary, is concerned. Certainly, we are not even meeting, our counterparts in West Africa. They may be poorer than we are, but we are not spending as much as far as the educational sector is concerned.
And the phenomenon right now is the Japa syndrome. I don't know if you're aware of it. Many Nigerians, about almost 70,000 of them, I understand, this year alone have gone to the UK in education-related trips. Is it something that you are hoping that you have solution to? Or?
Yeah, I mean, if you have quality institutions, why not? I mean, I ran a quality institution. And I remember when I started my university project, I made sure, first of all, I provide all the necessary infrastructure. I provided light, water, uninterrupted everything. By the time I advertised, all our professors, very many of our professors and doctors from the United States came back and they found there was internet, there was electricity, there was everything. That's why today the highest concentration of internet penetration is in a remote place called Yola, Nigeria.
How do you, if you were elected, how would you make Nigeria work, the education sector?
By investing more in education.
Up to how much do you think we should be spending?
We should be spending at least the minimum recommended by UNESCO. We should be doing that.
All right. Your Excellencies, there is yet another very important aspect of our lives, which is health. There is an 11-year-old girl who is concerned about the state of the health sector in Nigeria. I'll allow you to listen to what Chizoram had to say. Take a listen to her.
My name is Chizoram Azwiki, and I'm just 2. I want to know, as president, what would you do to ensure universal health coverage for every citizen in Nigeria? I once met a 2-year-old baby who had a tumor in her brain. Her parents couldn't afford her treatment on time. My dad and uncle started a fundraiser to be able to get enough money to pay for her treatment. So unfortunately, she didn't survive. I want to know, as president, what would you do to ensure universal health coverage for every citizen in Nigeria so that a child in her position would have had a high chance of survival?
All right. Sad story there from Chizoram that she explained.
Very, very, very sad. We set up the Nigeria Health Insurance Scheme during our administration. But understandably, I heard since we left office, the scheme has been poorly implemented. So my position is that we should strengthen the Nigeria Health Insurance Scheme to make sure that health insurance is available to as many Nigerians as possible. This is one. Secondly, and is to develop incentives, to the private sector also to invest in healthcare, because the participation of the private sector is very, very essential in very, very specialized aspects of healthcare. I think if we adopt these two policy options, we will be able to provide healthcare to the majority of our people.
Great. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
Add a little to that. The National Health Insurance Scheme has been established. The fact is that, unfortunately, most of the sub-national government did not participate in that scheme, and that limited coverage. That obviously became an issue. So there'll be the need to engage the sub-national governments through the governors to ensure that they enlist themselves in the scheme. Beyond that, we also did realize that there is a vulnerable group in Nigeria, and when we were in the Senate, in the 7th Senate, we had to eventually pass the National Health Act, which was led by, I was chairman of the Senate Committee on Health. And in that, there's a clause that provides for funding for the vulnerable group. And if that money is actually utilized, it creates a pool of funds that can add on to whatever is within the pool of funds of the National Health Insurance. And with the participation, as my presidential candidate has said, of the organized private sector and the informal sector, bringing all of them into the national health insurance bracket, you'll find that you have enough pool of funds to be able to take care of the very vulnerable who are not able to pay their premiums. In Delta State, for instance, since 2017 January, we have been providing for the vulnerable, here classified into all pregnant women and children under the age of 5, from 0 to 5 years. We've been providing and paying their premium from the pool of funds that we have been able to generate with the state government funding it. But unfortunately, we've had just one release because the act was signed in 2014 December. It was operationalized by this current government, but just for 2018 monies were released, and since then we've had a lot of hiccups. So the act is actually not followed through, because government is supposed to provide some level of funding as required by law. And then if that money gets into a pool of funds, the state governments are supposed to pay their own counterpart funding. And that creates a large pool of funds. So the government at the federal level would definitely put down its own funding and get the state governments to provide the counterpart funding. I think that would create the needed pool of funds. And if we're able to do that, we would have been able to reduce the very high level of infant mortality and under 5 mortality rate that we have, one of the worst indices in the world. We'll be able to reduce the very high level of maternal mortality. And I think there will be a turnaround in the next 4 years. And I believe that we'll critically look into that and get it operationalized.
Okay, we are due for a break, but there is a very important aspect of our lives, and that is the inclusive community, which I would like you to deal with tonight also. We'll take one of the questions before we go on break. Mr. Jack Capella, who sincerely supported us in getting an interpreter tonight from the Albino Foundation. Hi, Mr. Capella. If you have one quick question, we get a response and we go on break.
Thank you, Shane. Good evening, Your Excellencies. My question is simple and direct. Would you provide free and compulsory education for persons with disability? And if you say yes, tell me how you'll pay for it.
Thank you for making that question precise and straight to the point.
There is already law which provides free and compulsory education to every Nigerian child from primary up to secondary school. The law establishing the UBE provides that. And that's why we have even imposed education tax on Nigerians to be able to accomplish that. So, I mean, whether you are disabled or not, or whether you are handicapped or not, the law provides that you must have basic education free of charge from primary up to secondary school. But sub-national governments are not cooperating with the federal government to ensure that that is achieved, meaning states, government, and local governments. You must understand that education is a concurrent, issue in our constitution. And most of these subnationals are yearning for more autonomy and more resources. We are ready to give them more autonomy and more resources, but are you ready to hold them accountable? Epele, are you ready to hold them accountable?
Let me just take a simple correction. And I know this is not to put you down or anything. Nobody's handicapped. Nobody's disability. We are persons with disability.
In nomenclature.
Put our condition last and put the person, because the person will always be there and the events will go away.
All right, correction taken.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Right. We will get some more inclusive concerned questions when we come about persons with disability and women and children. Those are very, very important. Ma Odi, one of the right activists in this country, is standing by about issues of women. How much of inclusion would women get in an Atiku Okowa government should they win an election? We'll be getting reaction, plus more from the social media. A lot is coming. Stay with us. It's still the People's Town Hall right here on Channels Television.
that you have registered to vote in 2023 general elections, to ensure your voice is heard through your vote, there are a few more things you need to do. 1. Listen for INEC's announcement on when distribution of PVCs begin for those who registered this year. 2. Go and collect your permanent voters card PVC. 3. Check your polling unit at www.inecnigeria.org/elections/polling-unit/ for the exact location. 4. Come out on election day to vote and protect your vote. 5. Remember number 1 to 4. We can only protect our democracy when we all vote. This message is from the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room with support from UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO.
Stay connected to the world with Channels TV Podcast and get all the trending stories. Simply log on to channelstv.com, click on podcast, select the program of your choice, and listen. Our podcast is available on Apple, Google, and Spotify. Tap the expertise you trust. Touch the stories that touch you. Anytime, anywhere.
Are you registered to vote in the 2023 general elections? Collection of permanent voters cards (PVCs) begins on Monday, 12th December 2022 to Sunday, 22nd January 2023 at all the 774 local government offices of the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. daily, including Saturdays and Sundays. If you are unable to collect your PVC at the local government office located where you are registered to vote, visit the registration area or ward center where you are registered to vote from Friday, 6th January 2023 to Sunday, 15th January 2023. Help desks will also be available to assist registrants with complaints relating to their PVC collection. Ensure you collect your PVC and vote in the 2023 general election because people's votes count. This message is brought to you by the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room.
Thank you so much indeed, everyone, for staying with us. There's so many questions I know I was reading. He's so angry that Nigeria have been in the position Morocco is now, making history, and they want to know what the Atiku Okowa will be planning for Nigeria's spot. These are so many questions on the minds of Nigerians. But let's get back to it. I guess I would like to ask that question much later. But let's get to Ima Odi, a right activist. Hi, Ms. Odi, for coming for this evening. What exactly are your concerns? Perhaps just one of them tonight.
Good evening, Mr. Excellencies. I want to point out how you will ensure the inclusion of Nigerian women in structures of representation and decision-making when elected into office. Will you be willing for the establishment of a feedback platform mechanism where civil society and your government will meet maybe quarterly to assess your performance and also to get a feedback and correctively look at the challenges and how to resolve themselves?
Thank you. First and foremost, at the very minimum, we will try to meet the Beijing Declaration on Women Participation, which we did during our administration. And that's a minimum of 30%, women inclusion as far as, the federal government was concerned. And we implemented that during our administration. What I can assure you is that we will build on the Beijing, convention requirement, and then, of course, see how we can also get other subnational governments, that is the states, and also the local governments, to be all inclusive as far as that policy is concerned.
Will you be willing for the establishment of a platform where government and CSOs meet?
Why not? I have already announced that we are going to resume interactive sessions with all sectors of the Nigerian society. as we used to do then. Those of you should remember when we were in office, every month we meet with a selected sector of the Nigerian either economy or social aspect. And we listen to their problems and we listen to what they want to do, and then we go back and see how we can now implement those things. So we intend to continue with that dialogue with all parts of the society.
All right, thank you. Let's take Aswadi, right? All right, please go ahead.
Excellency, sir, it is no more news that Christian minorities in the North have been crying persecution occasioned by systemic dissemination of their communities and a subtle marginalization. We also know that in your capacity as former vice president, you have earned a voice in the Project Nigerian. So what have you done in the face of violence and persecution against Christians in the North? Nevertheless, for the purpose of this meeting, when you become president, how do you hope to fix this? And also in the face of the disunity and polarization currently prevalent in Nigeria.
All right, thank you. Mark. That's a tough one, isn't it?
Yeah, not a tough one, because all religions are being persecuted as far as I'm concerned in this country. It all depends on where you find yourselves. You know, I know of very minority religious sects that are also being discriminated against, but what we should be able to do is to make sure that religious discrimination should specifically be dealt with, you know, by the government wherever it is found. But you find that most of these, again, are the responsibilities of the sub-regional, you know, governments, whether the state governments or the local governments. Everybody tend to leave everything for the federal government, you know, which I believe should not be the case. But maybe by the time we decentralize the security architecture of this country and we give states responsibility, we give local government responsibility, they should be able to deal with these local issues which are far, far away, you know, from the federal government.
All right. I know that Mr. Tengi George Okoli is there. Hi, Tengi.
Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellencies, your manifesto posits that as a result of poor management of resources, Nigeria is today facing unprecedented fiscal crisis characterized by rising debt levels and revenue shortfalls. This stands to become significantly worse as we know Nigeria depends on fossil fuels for a significant portion of its revenues, over 80% of its exchange earnings, funds needed to service debts and fund budgets, over 50% of federal budget, 60 to 80 for all producing states, to fund a lot of the goals in your manifesto and promises made here today. What is the strategy and plan to manage the risk of revenues needed to manage the economy, fund development, and the $1.9 trillion energy transition plan as all companies diversify and Nigeria's partners should to clean energy sources and the global energy transition continues to gather steam. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
How do we fund all these programs in the face of declining, you know, revenue from fossil oils? First of all, I believe that we need, before, of course, the end, we need to maximize, you know, our earnings as far as the fossil oils are concerned, to make sure that we get as much revenue as we can get. Of course, we know presently some oil-producing countries like Saudi Arabia, like Angola and others are raking in more money, and while we are not, we have to make sure that we take the best, you know, opportunities of raising more money as far as fossil oils is concerned. But of course, you know that we have more gas. Is investing in exploitation of more gas resources which we have got, which is the future, of the economy of the world as far as that is concerned, revenue is concerned. So this is maybe my vice, who is from an oil-producing part of the country and gas-producing, may also have additional contributions to make.
I think in addition to what the presidential candidate has said, there's no doubt that while other countries are getting a lot more resource now, which can be used to develop other sectors of the economy, we don't seem to benefit from that. Why? Because we are producing less than what we ought to produce, which ought not to be the case. So there's a need to ramp up the production and the sales. And how do we do with that? We have to deal with the current issues of illegal oil bunkering in the Niger Delta by strong community engagement, by ensuring that we implement the Petroleum Industry Act, which we also has a community buying into the project. That is very important that we deal with that. Also working with the security agencies and the communities to deal with that aspect. He has also said we're taking out the fuel subsidy, which is also good because a lot of our resource that would have made, the little that we are making, which is far less than what we ought to make, we're also spending a lot to get in PMS into the country. But everything will be done from his program to ensure that there is increased refining of products within Nigeria. And there are prospects to that because like the Dangote refinery is almost coming to a startup, and we hope that we'll be able to open up space for other greenfield development. But as he did say, the gas sector is actually a sector that we have tended to ignore because whatever we're doing today, the gas that we're still utilizing is the associated gas, which comes from the production of crude oil. But we have a lot of natural gas deposits, and we have failed. The initial gas development plan that the PDP government in the past put in place, we have not taken further steps to actualize those developments. And that is the future all over the world. A lot is going on. If you're talking about Qatar at the moment, their major resource is from gas development. We started about the same time. The NLNG that we're talking about today, it's only recently they started developing their 7th train. Why? Because there are bottlenecks in government. That ought not to be. So these are issues we are going to look into. The gas development plan, ensure that that reform is carried on critically to be able to generate funding for us. Everybody all over the world, they are looking for gas now with the Russia-Ukraine war. But unfortunately, we are not able to buy into that space because we didn't do what we ought to do right. So we're definitely going to look into areas of developing the gas sector, the downstream, and be sure that we're able to move things forward.
I guess James is another person in the room that is standing by to ask you questions. James, hi.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Sheon, and good evening, Your Excellencies. I want to take you on your campaign promise of marking $10 billion for economic stimulus. This is about 4.4 trillion naira if you convert it. Now, I want to know in practical terms and succinctly so, when this is going to happen. Is it going to be an executive order as soon as you are resuming office, because you say 100 days in office? And where are you going to get this 4.4 trillion naira from? And of course, how are you going to ensure the spread so that all Nigerian citizens will benefit from this program, given the kind of corruption that we usually have in this kind of scheme? And of course, the current administration signed up Startup Act recently. What is your administration going to do to leverage the provision of this act to ensure that you stimulate the interest of our youth in entrepreneurship as a tool for combating poverty we are facing?
Thank you so much, James.
Well, thank you very much. Where am I going to get? I have already indicated in my earlier statements, if you were listening. Some of this funding will be achieved through the privatization, one, of the refineries, 2, removal of subsidy, is going to be a whole lot of money, which will take care of these, particularly 2 issues that we have pledged, in our policy document. But you must also understand that we will, of course, require the National Assembly, by way of legislation in some of these items to pass them through. So it is not just going to be by fiat or by an executive order. The only thing that may not require the National Assembly's approval is the privatization of the refineries. That immediately will fetch you more than 10 billion. So, and then, of course, the fuel subsidy, of course, it has already been legislated. All what you need to do is to announce, and engage all stakeholders as far as the removal of subsidy is concerned. That, again, that will fetch you another billions, which you can invest in other sectors of the economy. So I don't think we are going to go into debt again to be able to do that.
All right. There are some very interesting questions coming on social media. Is that buzz? It takes a lily liver person cannot stay on those platforms, I promise you. But before we get into that, there were a few folks who are asking me to ask you about sports. What plans do you have for sports? I guess there's one moment in our lives as a people in Nigeria that we do not disagree, and that's when Nigeria national teams are playing either basketball or football. We are not in the World Cup, unfortunately. And someone said to me yesterday that maybe, just maybe, we would have been in the position Morocco is right now. Do you have a plan for sports? And how far can we go, should you be elected under your government, with sports?
It requires encouraging all sectors of the economy actually to invest in sports, not only government. All sectors of the economy, private sector inclusive, public sector inclusive, sub-regional governments inclusive. What I have found in Morocco is that they have provided football playing fields in almost every neighborhood. Any neighborhood you go in Morocco, no matter small village, towns, cities, you find that they have provided public football fields, and you see children from as young as primary school children playing football early in the morning before they go to school, and later in the evening when they return from school. I think we have to encourage that, and it means involving all levels of governments, local government, state government, as well as federal government. All what federal government can do is to make sure that they support some national governments in providing sporting facilities in public places and as well as institutions.
That a private sector-led thing is important, but as the federal government, as the presidential candidate has said, engaging the subnational governments to invest in sports. And the effects can be very glaring. I'll give you an example. Just last year, when we had the 20th National Sports Festival in Edo State, it was supposed to hold in 2020, but it had later. And you find that Edo State government put in a lot of resources, and you find them competing with Delta State. We never really had states who could compete with Delta State. And we eventually, at the end, did win the first position, but they were a close second. But Bayelsa State took everybody by surprise in this 21st National Sports Festival that just ended yesterday. And they swept through to the second position, although they didn't compete so closely with us because we had a very wide margin. But you saw them overtaking every other state, even overtaking Edo State, because the governor actually did pay a lot of attention to sports, and he actually encouraged a lot of their youth. And we found that those who have been groomed in the last 2 years, became so good because they provided them with facilities. So at the end, Delta State still came first, but Bayelsa State now came second, with other states following through. So actually, a special attention being paid to developing youth and getting the talents. And how do you start that? We must encourage the subnational government to start them off from the primary school through to the secondary school. That's what we do in Delta State. We have primary school sporting activities and games. We have secondary school sporting activities and games and competitions. So you're actually able to develop them at a very young stage and then find ways. And a lot of our athletes have been sent overseas on scholarship, not on a state scholarship, but they get scholarship from overseas because they are budding talents, and once they are discovered, it's quite easy to have a lot of them. Last year alone, we had over 20 of them going on U.S. scholarship, and many more on a yearly basis actually going through that route. So we can actually develop sports and help to encourage people to gain scholarship overseas.
Thank you so much. A few controversial questions are coming. Your Excellency Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, these questions, I understand that they are very popular from those who are sending in the questions online. And this one is coming on Twitter from Eziafa Amaka. He said, my question to Atiku, why did he delete the tweet condemning the murder of Deborah? And similar one, Matthew Tam Atigere at Real Matati says, I want to ask Atiku why he has failed to condemn the killing of Deborah in Sokoto and if he can condemn it. Do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I have been asked this question several times. And all what I said, I asked the tweet to be deleted because I normally approve every tweet. So since I didn't approve it, I said delete it. And if you read my subsequent statements on that matter, I condemned it. I condemned it. There is nowhere where it is said or it is as an injunction in the Islamic faith that you can go and take somebody's life. Nowhere. It has to be through due process.
This one is on Instagram, and the Instagrammers are very much controversial people too in their engagements. This one is coming from Tunde Abubakar at Adesh Shirayo. He says, my question goes to His Excellency Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. Based on what we the masses hear from both parties, why is it so difficult for him as an individual to meet Wike personally and sort things out with his wealth of experience?
I have met Wike 2 times in Port Harcourt, 2 times in Abuja, 1 time in London, personally.
So he was asking, why is it difficult to sort things out with your wealth of experience?
It's not on my part.
So he's on the other side?
Yeah, he's on the other side.
So you're waiting for him?
Yeah, I'm waiting.
Indeed. So there is another question. This one is from Balogun Real One. He wants to know, will they and their families use the health facilities in the country or fly out of the country as usual? That is from Balogun. And there is a similar one. Do you plan on developing our hospitals so that politicians will stop traveling abroad for medical treatment?
Why not? We will support the private sector, particularly the private sector. You know, they have the necessary, funding actually to build, excellent hospitals in the country. We will support them. We will give them incentives to do that. Of course, the public sector is also a contributor as far as health is concerned.
All right. Any comment from you, Your Excellency, in that regard?
Medical doctor.
Because the questions are to both of you, whether or not you will not fly out, you and your families for health and medical checks.
Our team has continuously put the card straight that we encourage the private sector to develop our tertiary health institutions, while we encourage the subnational governments to ensure that the primary healthcare development service is at its best, working with the local governments, because we must understand that that area is also critically very important. Because when you're able to ensure that you provide basic health services through the primary healthcare centers across the nation, you find that fewer people are going to progress in illness to the secondary healthcare services. And when the secondary healthcare services work well, only a very small percentage will proceed to the tertiary healthcare service. And the tertiary healthcare service, apart from our teaching hospitals, you'll find that the private sector needs to fill the gap. And that is where you're going to have real standard hospitals. Most persons who also go overseas, they're actually going to private healthcare facilities. And I believe that a lot of them are coming in Nigeria now, but primarily in Lagos and Abuja. But we can encourage the private sector. By the time you have one of such in every geopolitical zone well developed, then it can take care of the tertiary healthcare services, and our people wouldn't need to travel overseas. Right. And we must also become very careful, and we're going to try to encourage Nigerians. There are some Nigerians, whether you provide the best in Nigeria, they just believe that you have to go overseas. Because I've seen a lot of people going overseas for kidney transplant, and we have better results in some of our hospitals here. We have had a lot of good results in Abuja and Lagos. But you find people going overseas and they have poorer results in terms of the percentage of persons who truly survive after kidney transplant than what we have in this country.
Thank you so much, Your Excellencies. Perhaps the last bit of this conversation is a charter of demands that are coming from our partners in the civil society. There are a few documentation that have been done in respect of most of things that have been discussed. I have a copy for you and Senator Ifeanyi Okowa. Basically, what the civil society organization have done is to document some of those questions, and they're asking whether or not you will be able to look through it and give Nigerians that assurance that you will keep to some of these. This is your copy. I'll pass it on to you. But as a final, closing part of this conversation, I'll allow Atiku Abubakar just a minute for the wrap-up on behalf of the party and telling Nigerians why they should be looking in the direction of the umbrella come February next year.
Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity. I think this evening we have been able to put before you Nigerians a very experienced team, a very competent team, a very patriotic team to help pilot the affairs of this country. As we have all agreed, Nigeria is facing very, very serious challenges, maybe challenges that we have not faced before. And it requires a team, or rather a teamwork of dedicated, experienced Nigerians who have proved, their mettle in their respective domains. And I think the pair of us are really unbeatable.
Thank you so much indeed. Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, and Senator Ifeanyi Okowa, the vice presidential candidate of the PDP. What an engagement. Nigerians, you have been presented with the option of the People's Democratic Party, and the choice is before you. You've heard across all the sector. You do not have any excuse not to go out there on election day to make your choice and make your votes count. Don't forget, on Monday, you have the opportunity to start collecting your permanent voter cards. And we continue this engagement, and we look up to January. There will be a landmark engagement with the front runners. Watch out for that. But I must sincerely thank you indeed, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar and Senator Ifeanyi Okowa, for coming tonight. And the chieftains of the PDP that are here and our partners. Thank you so much indeed, Nigerians. And that's our beat on the People's Town Hall, and this series continues. Thank you so much indeed for watching. On behalf of the team, I'm Chinua Kimbaloe. A very good evening to you all.
would we be without biodiversity? Probably extinct. Without biodiversity, the entire support system for all living things would completely collapse. That's why we must